أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه العبد المؤيد والرسول المسدد حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وصحابته المنتجبين. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فقل تعالوا ندعو أبناءنا وأبناءكم ونساءنا ونساءكم وأنفسنا وأنفسكم. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Tonight we gather to commemorate the martyrdom of one of the most controversial figures in history. A man that was so loved by some that was declared God, and was hated by others to the point that they declared him as a kafir and a mushrik. Al-Khalil ibn Ahmad al-Farahidi, a well-known scholar, he says, what do I say about a man whom his enemies hid his virtues out of jealousy, and his followers also hid his virtues out of fear of his enemies? Yet out of all of that hiding, the world is full of his virtues. He is none other than Amir al-Mu'mineen, Asadullah al-Ghalib, Ali ibn Abi Talib. Where do we begin? Where do we start from? With this gigantic ocean of knowledge and virtues. A giant that gathered all of the virtues that ever existed. So where do we begin and where do we end? A man that was born in the most noble of places, a place that no one else was ever born in, and no one will ever be born in that same place again, in the holy Kaaba. When Maryam, the mother of Isa, she was pregnant with Isa, and at the time of delivery, she came inside of Masjid al-Quds in Jerusalem. She was about to give birth inside Bayt al-Maqdis. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Maryam to leave. He tells her, "Inna hada baytu ibadah wa laysa baytu wilada." This is a house of worship. This is not a house of giving birth, a house of labor. So she left and she gave birth somewhere else. As for Fatima bint Asad, when she was about to give birth to Amir al-Mu'mineen, she comes inside Masjid al-Haram, but that was not enough. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens the Kaaba for her to come and give birth inside the Kaaba. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. She remains inside the Kaaba for 3 days, with food being presented to her and her child. After 3 days, she leaves the Kaaba. When did this ever happen? To a prophet, to a saint, to one of the Sahaba? Wallahi al-Azim, if this was a virtue for one of the other Sahaba, we would have been hearing about it all day and all night. We would have been seeing thousands of books written all about it. But because this is a virtue for Ali ibn Abi Talib, no one seems to mention it from the other school of thought. It seems to be forgotten that Amir al-Mu'mineen was born inside the Kaaba. Who else was born inside the Kaaba? And who will be born inside the Kaaba till the Day of Judgment? None other than Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. From the moment that he was born, his primary caretaker, the one who would feed him, the one who would care for him, the one who would put him to sleep was Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Amir sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Amir al-Mu'mineen says that Rasulullah would feed me as an infant. He would hold me and I would smell his odor, that prophetic odor. I would smell it. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi would feed me and I'm an infant. To the point that the food, if it was hard to chew, Rasulullah would first chew it and then he would put it in the mouth of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. A child that was raised by Amir al-Mu'mineen. He would spend his days, he would spend his nights with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Even the day that Rasulullah received his first revelation in Ghar Hira, in the cave, he wasn't by himself. He was in the company of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. When Jibreel comes down with the first verses, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. Amir al-Mu'mineen was sitting next to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Rasulullah would tell him, Rasulullah asked him, did you see? He said yes. Did you hear? He said yes. Rasulullah told him, إنك تسمع ما أسمع وترى ما أرى إلا أنك لست بنبي. You see what I see and you hear what I hear, except you're not a prophet. And Amir al-Mu'mineen became the first. He became the first to believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Him, and then after him as-Sayyidah Khadija. Yet this virtue, we see that it's given to others. That so-and-so was the first to believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. This is a lie. Those who claim to be the first to believe in Rasulullah, they were too busy worshipping idols. When Amir al-Mu'mineen was the first to bow down to Allah and to accept the message of Allah and to believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Yet, when we read Ibn Taymiyyah, ironically, he admits that Amir al-Mu'mineen was the first to believe in Rasulullah. Yet look out at how he distorts the events. He says that Ali ibn Abi Talib said the Shahadatain and he became a Muslim at the age of 10. And at the age of 10, that means he did not go through puberty, he was not mature. Thus, his Shahadatain is not accepted because he was a child. And after he became mature, we don't recall him saying the Shahadatain. Thus, the Islam of Ali ibn Abi Talib is under question. This is Ibn Taymiyyah. This is Ibn Taymiyyah. Amir al-Mu'mineen was the first to believe in Rasulullah, was the first to support Rasulullah, was the first to stand by Rasulullah and willing to sacrifice his life for Islam and for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Allah reveals the verse, وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ, and warn your close and immediate family members. Rasulullah calls and invites his immediate family members, his uncles and his cousins, and the top men from Bani Hashim. He gives them a speech and he lectures them, and then he says, مَنْ يُعَازِرَنِي عَلَى هَذَا الْأَمْرِ, who will help me with this ordeal, with Islam? على أن يكون أخي ووصي وخليفتي فيكم. Who will help me with this ordeal so that he will become my brother and my successor and my heir? No one stood other than Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. He was only 12 or 13. Again, Rasulullah repeated the request once again. It was no one other than Amir al-Mu'mineen that stood up. Rasulullah held the hand of Amir al-Mu'mineen and he said, إِنَّ هَذَا أَخِي وَوَصِيِّي وَخَلِيفَتِي فِيكُمْ فَاسْمَعُوا لَهُ وَأَطِيعُوهُ. This is my brother and my successor and my heir among you, so listen to him and obey him. The men of Bani Hashim, they came to Abu Talib, they started ridiculing him. They told him, Ya Abu Talib, you have to listen to your son. You have to obey the commands of your son. Abu Talib told them, I will be honored to obey the commands of my son. Al-Tabari, the famous scholar Al-Tabari, he narrates the story. The story of وَأَنذَرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ. In his tafsir, Tabari has two books, a tafsir and a history book. In his tafsir, he narrates the story just as I said it right now, without any distortions. But in his history book, he says that Rasulullah held the hand of Amir al-Mu'mineen and he said that this is my brother and so and so. So and so? What is that so and so? That so and so is that he's my successor and my heir. But my successor and my heir became so and so. You see how they distorted history? How they distorted the facts? How they distorted the verses and the narrations? Yet Amir al-Mu'mineen remained with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Rasulullah would go out in the city of Mecca and he would preach and he would call Quraysh to Islam. Yet Quraysh would send their children to stone Rasulullah, to beat Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. And Amir al-Mu'mineen was there to be a defender for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. He would defend him. He would serve as a bodyguard. Amir al-Mu'mineen was known by Quraysh as Qudam. Do you know what Qudam means? Amir al-Mu'mineen, for the children that would go and stone Rasulullah, he would go and bite their ears. He would he would bite their noses. And he would pull their noses off to the point that he was called Qudam. No one would dare go close to Rasulullah after that, because his bodyguard was Ali ibn Abi Talib, the best of bodyguards. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The night that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi wanted to leave from Mecca to Medina, that night there was a conspiracy against the life of Rasulullah. Quraysh had gathered and they wanted to come inside the house of Rasulullah in the middle of the night and to assassinate him on his bed. They chose several men from the different clans of Quraysh, so that the blood of Rasulullah does not lie on one clan, but it will be distributed on all. They will all be guilty of his death. They gathered several men. They waited outside. Abu Lahab, the uncle of Rasulullah, he forbade them from attacking the house of Rasulullah in the middle of the night. He said, there are women, there are children. We shall not attack in the middle of the night. We will attack in the morning. That night, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi asked Amir al-Mu'mineen to sleep in his bed. As Rasulullah leaves Mecca, he asks him, Ya Ali, will you sleep in my bed and risk your life for me that night? Amir al-Mu'mineen did not ask, will I die? Will I be killed? What will happen to me? Amir al-Mu'mineen says, أَوَتَسْلَمُ أَنْتِ ya Rasulullah? Will you be safe? Tell me, if I do this, will you remain safe? Rasulullah told him, yes, I will be safe. Amir al-Mu'mineen told him, I will be honored to sleep in your bed. That night, Amir al-Mu'mineen slept in the bed of Rasulullah. As Rasulullah left, the mushrikeen, they came in the morning. To their disappointment, they found that it is Ali ibn Abi Talib sleeping in the bed of Rasulullah, while Rasulullah had escaped. That day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gathered Jibreel and Mikael, these two well-known angels. He told them, I've made you brothers, and I've decided for one of you to die. Which one of you chooses to die and let his brother live? Jibreel said, I wish to live. And Mikael also said, I also wish to live. Neither of them decided to sacrifice his life for his brother. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them, go down to earth and guard Ali ibn Abi Talib. For I've made him the brother of Rasulullah, and he chose to die for the sake of his brother. Go down and guard him in his bed. They came down to him, Jibreel and Mikael. One stood by his head and the other stood by his feet. And they both told him, Bakhin laka ya Ali. Inna Allah yubahi bika malaikatu sama. Congratulations, Ya Ali. Allah Allah praises you in front of His own angels. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Ya Ali. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi leaves Medina, and he leaves Amir al-Mu'mineen behind him to pay his debts, to give back his amanat, to give back the debts and the things that Rasulullah was trusted with. He gives it back. Rasulullah goes to Medina, yet he refuses to enter Medina. He remained at the city of Quba, at the suburbs of Medina, waiting for his beloved Ali ibn Abi Talib. When Amir al-Mu'mineen arrived with the Fawatim, with the 3 Fatimas, when he arrived, Rasulullah says, now it is time for us to enter Medina. Rasulullah enters Medina with the companionship of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. This was a new era for the Muslims. This was a new era for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. It was time, there was no more persecution, there was no more giving the da'wah and inviting people to Islam underground. Now it was time to publicly call people to Islam. It was time to declare an Islamic nation. And here Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi needed the help of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Amir al-Mu'mineen served as the right hand of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Rasulullah gathered all of his companions and he made them into brothers. And that day was called the day of brotherhood, Yawm al-Mu'akhat. He gathered all of them and he made them into brothers. He would grab one of the men from the Ansar and he would make him a brother with one of the men from the Muhajirin, and he left Ali ibn Abi Talib to the end. Amir al-Mu'mineen came crying to Rasulullah. He told him, Ya Rasulullah, you left me without a brother. Rasulullah told him, Ama tarda an takuna akhi? I left you for me, Ya Ali. You are my brother. Anta akhi fi dunya wal akhirah. He became the Prophet's brother on that day. Not only did he become his brother, he became his son-in-law. When the other Sahaba, when the top Sahaba, they came and they proposed to Rasulullah to marry his daughter Fatima, Rasulullah would refuse and he would say that the decision is not with me. The decision is in the sky. Amruha fi sama. Allah makes the decision for Fatima al-Zahra. The first man came and he was rejected. The second man came and he was rejected. They both came to Amir al-Mu'mineen, to Ali ibn Abi Talib, and told him, apparently Rasulullah is waiting for you because no one else will be granted Fatima other than you. Amir al-Mu'mineen came to the house of Rasulullah. He proposed. He didn't say anything. Rasulullah told him, perhaps you are here to propose to my daughter Fatima. He said, Bala ya Rasulullah, indeed I've come to propose. Rasulullah went and asked Fatima al-Zahra. Fatima al-Zahra remained quiet. He said his famous statement, Subhanallah, sukutuha radaha. Her silence is a sign of her acceptance. Jibreel comes down to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. He tells him, Inna al-aliyyul a'la yuqra'uka as-salam. Allah sends His peace upon you. وَيَقُولْ زَوِّجِ النُّورَ مِنَ النُّورِ زَوِّجْ عَلِي مِنْ فَاطِمَةٍ. Allah says, let the light marry the light. Let Ali marry Fatima. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. From that day, this beautiful household started. This beautiful family that became a role model for all of the other Islamic families. It started with a role model like Amir al-Mu'mineen, as an exemplary husband like Amir al-Mu'mineen, and an exemplary wife like Fatima al-Zahra. A house full of love, full of nurture, full of compassion, full of understanding. And then the battles began. The battles began, one battle after the next. The first was the battle of Badr, when the mushrikeen of Quraysh, the mushrikeen of Mecca waged their first battle against Islam. An army of 1,000 gathered to fight an army of 313, when only 70 of them were horsemen. Only a few of them, maybe less than that, 15 of them were horsemen. 70 of them carried swords. The others did not carry swords. They only had sticks. Yet that day, Muslims were prevalent. That day, the Muslims killed 70 of the mushrikeen. 35 of them were killed at the hands of Ali ibn Abi Talib, Amir al-Mu'mineen. And the other 35 were killed at the hands of the other Muslims, and Amir al-Mu'mineen participated. And the other 35, yes, it was at this day, the Battle of Badr, in which Amir al-Mu'mineen killed the two uncles of Muawiyah, Shaybah and Utbah. It was at this day that the hatred grew for Ali ibn Abi Talib by Bani Umayyah. He had killed their main men, their leaders, Shaybah and Utbah. That is why when the head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam was brought to Yazid, the first words that came out of the mouth of Yazid was Layta ashyakhi bi Badrin shahidu. I wish that my uncles from Badr were now alive to see the head of the son of the man who killed them at Badr. You see, the animosity rose from Badr because Amir al-Mu'mineen annihilated them in Badr. Then it was in Uhud, when Amir al-Mu'mineen also participated in Uhud. But in Uhud, Muslims faced a defeat. Muslims lost in Uhud. Why? Because most of the Sahaba, they ran away. The top Sahaba that they speak of their virtues and their courage, they ran away. They let Rasulullah remain in the battlefield, in the middle of the battlefield, unprotected, while they ran away. One of the top Sahaba, he ran away for 3 days. The battle was over, yet he remained hiding for 3 days. Yet there was only a handful of people that remained with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. 5 people. One woman. Subhanallah. This woman was greater than some of the top Sahaba that claimed to be courageous. And 4 men. One of those men was Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. In the day of Uhud, Rasulullah was recalled saying time and time again, Ya Ali, ikshifha an yamini. Ya Ali, ikshifha an shimali. Ya Ali, I'm being attacked on my right. Ya Ali, I'm being attacked on my left. Cover me, Ya Ali ibn Abi Talib. Amir al-Mu'mineen would roam around Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. He kept on going around Rasulullah until his sword broke. Amir al-Mu'mineen came to Rasulullah and he said, Ya Rasulullah, inna al-mar' la yuharibu bisayfih wa hadha sayfi qad inkasar. Ya Rasulullah, a man fights with his sword, and here is my sword has broken. Jibreel comes down with a sword, a special sword called Dhul Faqar. He hands it to Rasulullah. Rasulullah hands it to Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen enters back in the battlefield. People heard the voice of Jibreel shouting in the sky, La fata illa Ali wa la sayfa illa Dhul Faqar. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Amir al-Mu'mineen remained loyal to Rasulullah. He kept on fighting. Jibreel comes down to Rasulullah and he says, Ya Rasulullah, inna Allah yaqul, inna hadihi hiya al-muwasat. This is loyalty, Ya Rasulullah. Look at Ali ibn Abi Talib. This is called loyalty, not the Sahaba that left you in the middle of the battlefield unprotected, facing the enemy. This is loyalty. Rasulullah said, yes, I know. Na'am. لأنه مني وأنا منه. I know that he's loyal because Ali is from me and I am from him. Jibreel said, and I am from you and I am from both of you, Ya Rasulullah. This was Uhud. As for the battle of Khandaq, when the mushrikeen had gathered forces with the Jews and they planned to attack, they conspired against the army of Islam and the army of Rasulullah. They planned to attack Medina. Salman al-Farisi gives a plan to Rasulullah to dig a ditch, a khandaq, around Medina so that they cannot easily be attacked. At that battle, when the mushrikeen gathered behind the ditch, the army of Islam, the army of Rasulullah gathered one fierce warrior by the name of Amr ibn Abdul al-Amiri. He crossed the ditch along with his horse. It's a huge ditch, yet he was able to cross. He jumped the ditch along, and he came to the side of the Muslims and he began to shout, who will fight me? Who will fight me? Who will come out and fight me? Rasulullah looked to them and he said, who will fight Amr ibn Abd Wud? And I will guarantee for him paradise. I guarantee for you paradise. No one stood other than Ali ibn Abi Talib. Amir al-Mu'minin tells him, sit down, Ya Ali. Sit down, have a seat. Who will fight Ali ibn Abi Talib? And I guarantee for him a seat in paradise. Again, Ali ibn Abi Talib rises. Amir al-Mu'minin tells him, sit down. Once again, who will fight Amr ibn Abd Wud? Amir al-Mu'minin stands. Amir al-Mu'minin tells him, Ya Ali, do you know who this is? Do you know who this man is? This is Amr ibn Abd Wud al-Amiri. Amir al-Mu'minin tells him, and Ya Rasulullah, do you know who I am? I am Ali ibn Abi Talib. Amir al-Mu'minin, Ya Ali. Amir al-Mu'minin enters the battlefield. As he's entering, Rasulullah said a statement that is recorded, will be recorded forever. He says, خَرَجَ الْإِيمَانُ كُلُّهُ إِلَى الشِّرْكِ كُلِّهِ. All of faith has went out to fight all of shirk, all of disbelief. Amir al-Mu'minin gets into the battlefield. Amr ibn Abd Wud was a huge man. He was tall. Amir al-Mu'minin was shorter than he was. He came down from his horse. Amr ibn Abd Wud looks at Amir al-Mu'minin. He tells him, Ya Ali, wasn't your uncle, wasn't your cousin afraid by sending you into the battlefield that I would kill you? Wasn't he afraid? Ali ibn Abi Talib tells Amr that when my cousin sent me to the battlefield, he was sure that I will kill you. They engaged in battle. Amr ibn Abd Wud was reluctant to fight. No matter what sort of champion you are, when you face Ali ibn Abi Talib, you become a coward. Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam would kill his enemies before the battlefield. He would psychologically kill them before the battlefield. He would just throw a couple of words at them. 50%, they were already dead. They were already dead. He just had to go back into the battlefield and kill the other 50%. Amr ibn Abd Wud al-Amiri told Amir al-Mu'minin to go back. He told him, your father Abu Talib is my friend and I don't wish to kill you. Amir al-Mu'minin told him, but I wish to kill you. Don't back down from the battle. Amir al-Mu'minin got into the battle and they began fighting. The dust arose. People had no idea what's happening. When the dust settled, they saw Amir al-Mu'minin sitting on the chest of Amr ibn Abd Wud, ready to take off his head. Muslims saw that. Amir al-Mu'minin stood up. He didn't cut off Amr's head. He stood up, he roamed around, he took a walk, he circled, and then he came back, and then he cut off Amr ibn Abd Wud's head. He came carrying the head from his beard. He carried the head and he put it in front of Rasulullah. And he said, this is the gift for you. Some Muslims, they asked Amir al-Mu'minin, they told him, Ya Ali, why didn't you kill him while you were sitting on his chest? Why didn't you cut off his head? He said, because the enemy of Allah, he spat in my face. If I wanted to kill him, I would have killed him for me, to seek vengeance for me, to take revenge for me. I didn't want to kill him for me. I wanted to kill him for Allah. So I took a walk. I wanted my anger to settle down so that this death is only for Allah. When I cut off his head, I did it for the sake of Allah. Amir al-Mu'minin, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alih, he gave him a special title. He gave Amir al-Mu'minin a special title that day. He said, ضَرْبَةُ عَلِيٍّ يَوْمُ الْخَنْدَقِ أَفْضَلُ مِنْ عِبَادَةِ الثَّقَلَيْنِ. The strike of Ali ibn Abi Talib on the day of Khandaq is greater than the worship of the Thaqalayn, the humans and the angels. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. In the battle of Khaybar, when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alih took his army to fight the last group of Jews remaining in the Arabian Peninsula who were troublemakers in the area, Rasulullah headed towards Khaybar and he gave the banner to the first man and he told him, go and break the door of Khaybar. The man comes back with his army. The hadith says, يُجَبِّنُ أَصْحَابَهُ وَيُجَبِّنُ, meaning he calls them cowards and they call him a coward. They tell him, you're a coward, we didn't reach victory because of you. The second day, Amir Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alih, he sends the second man with the banner. The second man goes. He comes back defeated. Again, يُجَبِّنُ أَصْحَابَهُ وَيُجَبِّنُوهُ. He calls them cowards and they call him a coward. Finally, Rasulullah decided to give the banner to a man that does the job. The man who will come back with a victory. The man that deserves the banner. He said, سَأَبْعَثُ غَدًا رَجُلًا. Tomorrow I will send a man, meaning the rest were what? That's for you to decide. Tomorrow I will send a man, رَجُلًا كَرَّارٍ. No offense, my dear sisters. سَأَبْعَثُ غَدًا رَجُلًا كَرَّارًا غَيْرْ فَرَّارٍ. A man who will go and does not run away. A man that does not give his back to his army, to the enemy army. You see, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he was known for two things in battle. One is that he would never give his back to the enemy soldiers, no matter how bad it was. That is why his injuries, Amir al-Mu'mineen's injuries, were always from the front position of his body. He never gave his back to the army. This is one. Number two, his strikes were always odd numbers. They were always one. Amir al-Mu'mineen never needed two strikes to finish the job. It was always one strike. وَكَانَتْ ضَرْبَتُهُ وِتْرًا. Mitra means one. سأبعث غدا رجلا كرار غير فرار يحب الله ورسوله. I will send a man that does not run away from the battlefield. He loves Allah and His Messenger. ويحبه الله ورسوله. And Allah also loves him and His Messenger. يفتح الله على يده. And victory will be at his hands. People wanted to know who is that man. Of course they all knew who was that man. The next day, as soon as Rasulullah wakes up, he says, Ya Ali, where is my cousin Ali ibn Abi Talib? Where is my brother Ali ibn Abi Talib? That night before, Amir al-Mu'mineen could not sleep because he had pain in his eyes. Amir al-Mu'mineen was called. They told him, Rasulullah is calling you. Amir al-Mu'mineen could not even open his eyes from the immense pain. They had to guide him to Rasulullah. Rasulullah came. He saw Amir al-Mu'mineen has pain in his eyes. He took some of his saliva. He put it on the eyes of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He opened his eyes and there was absolutely no pain. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Rasulullah gives the banner to Ali ibn Abi Talib and he tells him to go. Amir al-Mu'mineen goes into the battlefield. He goes to the castle of Khaybar. He goes to that door that 44 men were not able to lift. My dear friends, this is not an imaginary story. This is not a story that just we, the followers of Ahlul Bayt and the lovers of Ali ibn Abi Talib, say. This is a virtue that even his enemies admit to. Ibn Abi al-Hadid in Sharh Nahj al-Balagha, who's a Sunni scholar, he says, Ya qali'a al-bab alladhi an kaffihi ajizat أكف أربعون وأربع أقول فيك سميدع كلا ولا حاشا لمثلك أن يقال سميدع. Oh, the fierce warrior that lifted a door that 44 men were not able to lift. Amir al-Mu'mineen lifts the door of Khaybar. He breaks the door. He makes it into a bridge for the army to enter the battlefield, for the army to enter the castle of Khaybar. And that day the Muslim army was victorious. Why? Because Amir al-Mu'mineen was in the battlefield. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Amir al-Mu'mineen, if we want to talk about his battles and his courage in battle, we would have to talk the entire night. But just to say this, in the Battle of Siffin, as we're going in chronological order, I just want to put this before. In the Battle of Siffin, Amir al-Mu'mineen was so fearless that Muawiyah and his advisor, Amr ibn Abd Wud al-Amiri, they saw that Amir al-Mu'mineen was killing all of their fierce warriors. Yet there was one warrior in the camp of Muawiyah that they thought they could rely on. Amr ibn Abd Wud told Muawiyah, he told him, send this champion. Perhaps he can take care of Ali ibn Abi Talib. This warrior came in the middle of the battlefield. Amir al-Mu'mineen began to fight him when he saw that there's no chance. My dear brother pointed it out after the lecture. These men were known for their nudity in the battles and in the wars. This man saw that he has absolutely no chance against Ali ibn Abi Talib. He exposed himself. When he exposed himself, Amir al-Mu'mineen turned around and the man ran out of the battle. Amir Muawiyah tells Amr ibn Abd Wud, is this what you call a champion? This is a warrior, a man who exposes himself. You tell me this is a champion? In fact, Ya Amr, I think you should enter the battlefield. Amr ibn al-As. Of course, Amr ibn al-As was a coward. He was not even known for fighting. Yet Muawiyah is now ordering him to enter the battlefield. He was forced to enter the battlefield. Amr ibn al-As puts on his armor, he grabs a sword and he enters the battlefield. Before Amir al-Mu'mineen even hurts him, he exposes himself. Amir al-Mu'mineen turns around so that Amr ibn al-As can flee. He comes back, Muawiyah is laughing at him. He tells him, what is this, Ya Amr? Amr tells him, Ya Muawiyah, I think you should enter the battlefield. Muawiyah tells him, I think now you have interest in the throne. Ya Amr? Tells him, no, I think this will be good for the morale of the army. You should enter the battlefield. They say that Muawiyah put on his army and he grabbed his sword and he entered the battlefield. As soon as he saw Amir al-Mu'mineen approaching him, he did exactly what the other guys did. He exposed himself, and Amir al-Mu'mineen turned around and he gave him time to run away. Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ya Ali. Amir al-Mu'mineen looked at them and he said, is this a battle or is this a stripping contest? What is this? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Ahya ma'raka am kashfu awrat. You enter the battlefield to expose yourself? This was the courage of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. As for the battle of Tabuk, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi did not take Amir al-Mu'mineen with him. He left him in Medina. Some of the companions, they came and told Amir al-Mu'mineen that Rasulullah is tired of you, Ya Ali. This is why he's not taking you. Amir al-Mu'mineen came to Rasulullah. He told him, is this true? You are tired of me. You don't take me to the battlefield? Rasulullah told him, Ya Ali, أما ترضى أن تكون مني بمنزلة هارون من موسى إلا أنه لا نبي بعدي. Ya Ali, I've left you over the city so that you remain as my successor. Oh Ali, does it not please you that you are to me like Aaron was to Moses, except there is no prophet after me? As for the conquest of Mecca, and the conquest of Mecca, when the Muslim army was about to enter Mecca, the banner was raised by Sa'd ibn Mu'adh. Sa'd ibn Mu'adh raised the banner and he shouted, Al-yawm yawmul malhama, Al-yawm tusbal hurama. Today is the day of massacre. Today is the day that women will be taken as captives. Rasulullah said, no, what is this? This is not our slogan. Ya Ali, take the banner and change what he said. Amir al-Mu'mineen is the student of Rasulullah. He knows what Rasulullah wants to say. Rasulullah grabbed the banner and he said, Al-yawm yawmul marhama, Al-yawm tusanul harama. Today is the day of mercy. Today is the day that women will be protected. The Muslim army enters Mecca peacefully without fighting. They enter Masjid al-Haram. They enter Masjid al-Haram. The Kaaba itself was full of idols. It had 313 idols all around the Kaaba. Rasulullah tells Amir al-Mu'mineen that let me stand on your shoulders and break the idols. Amir al-Mu'mineen said that Rasulullah stood on my shoulders. I could not bear the weight. Thuqlun nubuwwa, the heaviness of the prophecy. I couldn't handle it. I told him, Ya Rasulullah, come down from my shoulders. I can't handle this. Rasulullah told him that I shall stand and you will get on top of my shoulders. Amir al-Mu'mineen stood on the blessed shoulders of Rasulullah. He says that when I stood on the shoulders of Rasulullah, I felt that I could touch the sky. I was so high that I could touch the clouds and the sky. Amir al-Mu'mineen with his stick, he grabbed the idols and he started breaking it, and he began to recite the verse, قُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلِ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. And in the last year of the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, he stops when he comes back, when he's coming back from Hajj, he stops in a place called Ghadir Khum. The companions that were behind, he waits for them to gather. The companions that were ahead, he tells them to come back. Rasulullah, on that scorching heat, that sunny day, he stops in the middle of the desert and he raises the hand of Ali ibn Abi Talib and he says, Allahumma man kuntu mawlah fahada aliyun mawlah, Allahumma wali man walah, wa'adi man adah, wansur man nasarah, wakhdhul man khadalah. O people, whoever I was his guardian, then Ali is his guardian. O Allah, support whoever supports Ali ibn Abi Talib, and neglect whoever neglects Ali ibn Abi Talib. The companions came to him. Umar ibn al-Khattab comes to him and he tells him, Ya Ali, bakhin laka ya Ali, asbahta mawlai wa mawla kulli mu'minin wa mu'mina. Congratulations, Ya Ali, you just became my master and the master of all believers. After 2 months, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi is on his deathbed, and the only one sitting next to him was Ali ibn Abi Talib. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi has his head in the lap of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Rasulullah, his final moments were with Ali ibn Abi Talib, no one else. Before Amir al-Mu'mineen came to him, he would look to his right and his left and he would say, Ayna Habibi Ali ibn Abi Talib? Where is my beloved Ali ibn Abi Talib? They called Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen came to him. انتظروا بعد دقيقة. Amir al-Mu'mineen came and Rasulullah had his lap. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Rasulullah placed his head in the lap of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and then his life departed while the others had gathered somewhere else. The other companions were conspiring at Saqifat Bani Sa'ada. They were thinking of how to take this khilafah from Ali ibn Abi Talib. And indeed, a new chapter started in the life of Ali ibn Abi Talib. The companions had conspired against him. The Khilafah was taken. Fadak was taken. Fatima al-Zahra was attacked. Her ribs were broken. Fatima al-Zahra was assassinated. And before he knew it, Fatima al-Zahra had departed and Amir al-Mu'mineen remained by himself. Yet did this mean that Amir al-Mu'mineen would live in solitude? No. Amir al-Mu'mineen gave all that he could for this nation. Amir al-Mu'mineen remained loyal to this nation that backstabbed him and deceived him. Yet he remained loyal to this nation. Time and time again, when they needed him, he would come back. They would come back and they would ask. Amir al-Mu'mineen was not greedy with his knowledge. He would give his knowledge to those that deceived him. Abu Bakr came to him. Umar came to him and he would seek the knowledge and counsel of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and Amir al-Mu'mineen was not greedy, to the point that Umar was famous for his famous statement, لولا علي لهلك عمر لا أبقاني الله لمعضلة ليس لها أبا الحسن. When the first went and the second went and the third went, then they realized that it was Amir al-Mu'mineen that deserved the khilafah all along. They came to Amir al-Mu'mineen after 25 years. They remembered that Amir al-Mu'mineen deserves the khilafah. When they came to him, he said, دعوني والتمسوا غيري. Leave me and go to someone else. Now you remembered me? After 25 years that you neglected me, now you come to Ali ibn Abi Talib? Now you realize that Ali ibn Abi Talib deserves the khilafah? Go and find someone else. دعوني والتمسوا غيري أنا لكم وزير خير مني لكم أمير. Let me be an advisor for you, better than for me to be an Amir for you. Amir al-Mu'mineen knew that they could not handle his justice. They cannot handle the truth. They cannot handle the words of justice. Amir al-Mu'mineen knew that if he were to come to power, he would bring them back to justice, something that they cannot handle. For the 25 years that passed, they got used to corruption. They got used to oppression. They could not handle the justice of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Even his close family members, even his close relatives, even a man like Zubayr and Talha and others abandoned Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen would say, "Ma abqali al-haqqu min sadiq." The truth and justice did not leave me any friends and any companions. Amir al-Mu'mineen lived with the people, like the people. He didn't live above the people. Amir al-Mu'mineen would say, أَأَقْنَعُ مِن نَفْسِي أَنْ يُقَالَ أَمِيرُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَلَا أُشَارِكَهُمْ فِي مَكَارِهِ الدَّهْرِ. Will I be satisfied for people to call me Amir al-Mu'mineen and I don't share with the people their agonies and their pain and their troubles? Amir al-Mu'mineen would live with the people. He would eat with the people. He would live amongst the people. He was a man. He was the imam of the people. Yet people could not handle his justice. Ibn Muljam conspired, the Khawarij conspired against Amir al-Mu'mineen. You see, this is what ignorance does. Ibn Muljam decided to kill Ali ibn Abi Talib inside a masjid. Why? So that this act becomes more rewarding. He will receive a greater reward for this act. And he wanted it to be on the eve of the 19th because perhaps it could be Laylatul Qadr and the rewards are multiplied on Laylatul Qadr, so that he will be rewarded for the death of Ali ibn Abi Talib. My dear people, Ali ibn Abi Talib was oppressed. Ali ibn Abi Talib was not known. People did not know who Ali ibn Abi Talib was. When he was killed in the middle of Salah, when the news spread in the Islamic nation, they heard that Ali ibn Abi Talib was killed in his Salah. They said, Ali ibn Abi Talib prays? The man even prays? This is how ignorant they were. This was the propaganda of Muawiyah, that Ali ibn Abi Talib does not even pray. But it was too late. When Amir al-Mu'mineen died, it was too late. The people of Kufa now realized whom they lost. A night like this, Amir al-Mu'mineen is on his deathbed. He's surrounded by his women, by his children, by his sons, by his daughters. They're weeping. Zainab cannot control her tears. Kulthum cannot control her tears. Al-Hassan wal-Hussein, is this real? Their father is now leaving them. These are his last moments. They will no longer see his shining face. The son of Ali ibn Abi Talib will set tonight. Is this real? They could not imagine life without Ali ibn Abi Talib. How can Zainab go on without her father? How can the orphans of Karbala, how can the orphans of Kufa go on without this compassionate father named Ali ibn Abi Talib? They gather around the bed of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He gathers his sons, his daughters, and he tells all of his sons to obey the children of Fatima al-Zahra, Al-Hassan wal-Hussein. And he tells them that your imam after me will be Al-Hassan. Obey him and follow his commands. And then he tells Imam al-Hussein to take care of his brother Al-Hassan. And then he tells his son Imam al-Hussein to take care of his sister Zainab. He tells them there will come a day in which you will need your sister Zainab. Don't forget about her, Ya Aba Abdullah. They gather around him. They begin to cry. Amir al-Mu'mineen tells them, Ya Ahlu Bayti, limadha tabkoon? Do not cry. This is a moment that I've been looking forward all of my life. It's like a man dying out of thirst and he's finally found water. My family, do not cry for me. I'm going in a good place. Amir al-Mu'mineen would fall asleep and wake up. Moments he woke up and he said to his family members, this is Rasulullah in front of me. This is Fatima al-Zahra. These are the loyal companions of Rasulullah gathering in front of me, and they're waiting for me, telling me, Ya Ali, hurry to us. We miss you. Ali ibn Abi Talib all of a sudden faces the Qibla. These are his last moments, my dear brothers and sisters. He faces the Qibla and he points ahead of him and he says, فَلِمِثْلِ هَذَا فَلْيَعْمَلِ الْعَامِلُونَ. For this the pious people should work towards. They seize his place in paradise. He says, Assalamu alayka ya Rasulallah, wa alaykum assalam ya malaikat Rabbi. Peace be upon you, O angels, O my Lord's angels. And then he says the shahadatain, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. And then he closes his eyes, and the soul of Ali ibn Abi Talib is lifted to the sky. أين المنادي وإماما وسيدا وعليا. I say, my dear master, Ya Ali ibn Abi Talib, the day that you died, your sons were sitting beside you. You were on your bed. You were in your house. Your son Hassan wal Hussein, they were sitting beside you. Your daughters were sitting beside you. You died in a respected manner. Ya Ali ibn Abi Talib, you were not surrounded by an enemy army. Your women were not in trouble. My dear master, you died in an honorable way, in a respected way. When you died, your children were surrounding you. But my master Ali ibn Abi Talib, where were you to see your son Hussein in Karbala? Where were his sons? Where were his daughters? Where were his companions? When Imam Hussein died, he was the only one on the battleground. He was the only one there, and the only ones were surrounding him were Shabr ibn Dhul Jawshan and Umar ibn Sa'd. أين المنادي وحسينا ومظلوما. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Raise your hands in dua, brothers and sisters. This is a night of dua. اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرته، ولا هما إلا فرجته، ولا عيبا إلا سترته، ولا خوفا إلا آمنته، ولا رزقا إلا بسطته، ولا شملا إلا جمعته، ولا مرضا إلا شفيته، ولا غائبا إلا حفظته وأدنيته، ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة لك فيها رضا ولنا فيها صلاح إلا قضيتها ويسرتها يا أرحم الراحمين. ولأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والعلماء والشهداء نقرأ سورة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.